Well, good morning, everybody. Appreciate you checking in with us again. I appreciate your time. So, I also want to apologize for the audio last week. Seems like we have a lot of audio problems here lately, and some of it has to do with when we're running the engines and I get too close to the engine with the thing and it switches it off. So we should have caught it. It appeared when we did, when Michael did it, that the audio was okay, but then obviously it was not. So I do apologize for that. So one of the big questions was about starting the motors. I think that one of the things that you have to take into consideration is what your temperatures are. The day that we tried to start this, it was in the 40s, probably about 45 degrees, which is cold for Houston and cold, pretty cold for Louisiana, where this boat usually is. So when you try to start a boat that just has regular carburetors on it, although it does somewhat have an electronic choke, you've got to be a little bit more careful. So you've got to kind of take things into consideration. The mistake that Michael made, because he's a lot younger, so he doesn't necessarily relate to a manual choke, is the fact if you put too much choke on, then you put too much fuel into the engine, and the plugs will foul or get really wet and won't fire correctly. And that's basically what we did. So it's important when you're going to start your motor to have an idea of what your temperatures are. So if you're used to starting it when it's 70 or 80 degrees and it starts just fine, it may not start so well when it's 40 degrees or even cooler. So those are the things you have to kind of keep in mind. Too less a choke, meaning you don't give it enough choke, won't help it start. Too much choke will foul the plugs up, they'll get wet. There's two ways to fix that problem. One of them is to just give it time. If you've really got them wet, sometimes it's just better to pull them out, dry them off, blow them out. I have to be honest with you, in the past, to speed it up, I've even taken a cigarette lighter, warmed up the ends of it, put the plugs back in, and 9 times out of 10 it has started. So those are the things that you kind of keep in mind. You have to know your boat. This boat was probably tuned, because it's probably ran in warm weather all the time, to run in warm weather. It has old style jets on it, so you have to screw the jet in and out on the carburetor to either make it richer or leaner. That's either more fuel or less fuel. Okay, so probably should do a better video on this, but I wanted to address it because I've been asked. I was sent several messages about it. So in this particular case, it's that fine line of how much choke you give it to when you get it started. When you get it started, you want to get it warmed up. Now, Michael tells me the temperature on a boat is 120 degrees. It's 120 degrees. It depends on the thermostat on them too. So like on a car, you can get different thermostats to open and close at a different time. But you want to get it up to temperature. Don't be messing with it. Let it warm up. Let it get into its operating mode, and then that way you will find that the motor will run a lot smoother and a lot easier. Usually if it's cold and it's out of its element, it's gonna be rough sounding. It's not gonna sound good. It's gonna load up the plugs. So those are the things to keep in mind. If I was to start this boat just out of the blue, I would start it without giving it any choke at all and see if it even tries to catch. If it doesn't, then I would give it choke. But I wouldn't keep going, wah, 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 because all you're going to do is flood it. The other thing that you need to be very, very careful of, and I can guarantee you a lot of boats that come in here have this problem, is old gas, and you can smell old gas a mile off. Smells like varnish. I'm not going to say you can't run your boat on old gas, because you can, but it's a lot harder to get it to start, and it's something you should be keeping up with. I can't count the number of times that somebody's brought the boat into Michael and said it won't start. We don't do a thing to it. We just disconnect it from their fuel tank, put it on a reserve tank that we have, and the thing will fire right up. That has happened on more than one occasion. So keep that in mind. When you're going to store your boat during the winter months, or when you're not going to use it, you know, personally, you know, I think it's a good idea to get the fuel out of there. I don't know about these fuel stabilizers and stuff. I've personally not had a whole great deal of success with them, but that's kind of like me and batteries, okay? So to each their own. If you've had success, don't listen to me. I've just personally never had a great deal of success with them. The other thing that you can do is make sure that you run it down, that you don't leave old fuel in the carburetors. So that's another thing. So as far as your starting procedures go, it boils down to ambient temperature outside, what the boat is tuned to run at, etc. In this case, we know this boat was tuned to run in Louisiana weather when it's hot. We know that because we were told that. If you don't know, it's something you should try to figure out, get the history if you bought the boat. The newer engines, this one over here is slightly newer than this, and I don't know a lot about Mercury motors, but I know one thing about any motor is you need fire, a spark, air, and fuel for it to run. I don't care what it is, it needs those three. If it doesn't have one of those three, it's not going to run. This one has a little thing on it that says computerized, what's that say? Ignition. Computerized ignition. So this bad boy is going to give you a little bit more help when you start it than that one over there. I don't know about this one. Is there a choke on this or not? There is a choke on this, but I guarantee you with this computerized ignition, it's going to give you a lot more help than the older style boats. So kind of keep that in mind. But the same thing does apply. It doesn't matter how many computers and stuff you've got on your boat or on the engine. Bad fuel, it won't run well. It may not start because there's not enough energy or whatever, you know, that's probably the right phrase, but I don't know what to say. Old fuel just doesn't have the same ignition that new fuel does. So this one, I think there's a year or so difference between the two, and obviously this one has been addressed. Over here, we even have a newer one. Can you hook up your computer to this?
No, but it has its own.
Okay, so this is a fuel-injected motor. Is it? I'm pretty sure it is.
It's not carbureted.
Huh?
It's not carbureted. Right? Is the carburetors on?
No, there's the bloated flies, but I think the injectors are on the other side. See, it just goes to show how much we don't know.
I think that is yeah, fuel injected. It says fuel injected right there.
It says fuel injected right there, but you can put a sticker on anything. Let me tell you, I've seen a lot of cars over the years that people have put SS badges on or GTO badges on, and they ain't what they're supposed to be. But anyway, the fuel injection motors are going to be a lot better. And the reason why they're going to be a lot better, they have a lot of sensors on them, they know what the ambient temperatures are, they know what the motor is, and it's going to adjust the injector to how much fuel you get into air. So usually these kind of motors are going to be a lot easier to start than those motors. Now, there's nothing wrong with those motors. Don't get me wrong. You just got to be a little bit more careful. You got to kind of baby it a little bit and get an understanding. You know, older guys that are watching this are going to know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, back in the day, you had to hit the gas pedal twice in your car, pull the choke all the way out, start it. It gets started, and then you put the choke halfway back in, and it's somewhat going. And then you'd have to pull it out a little bit, maybe give it a little gas. And then finally, as it started to warm up, you put the choke back in. It's no different than this. The big difference is that, and I've kind of noticed this about these boats, is this push-in thing on the ignition is a lot better than the ones that have the pull-out thing on the back that you have to make sure it gets pushed in and stuff. So we have seen those a couple of times, and those are a little bit of a pain. The same rule applies to this one. Bad fuel is not going to work. Not only that though, bad fuel can mess up sensors. Be careful about what you're putting in your fuels too. You need to do some homework on it. I have heard, just through the rumor mill, that some of these things that you can put in your fuel to help it affects the seals and stuff on some of the newer motors. And obviously the alcohol that they're putting in fuels and whatever is not necessarily the best for some of these motors, okay? So I think you need to keep that in mind. But the basic rules and principles are always the same. Doesn't matter how old or new your motor is, stale fuel that smells like varnish is going to be a lot more difficult to start. The other rule that does apply to all the motors, and we'll do a lot of a better video on this, is your services. Getting your services done on your motor. Getting your plugs changed out. Making sure that your coil wires are good. Making sure your coils are good. Making sure that you change out your oil in your lower unit before you have big problems. When Michael changes that out, they kind of filter it, they go through it, see if there's any metal shavings and stuff in there, that kind of stuff. This is all preventive stuff, okay? On your carbureted motors, just making sure that your carburetors are clean, etc. Making sure there's no mud daubers in here. You'd be surprised how many motors we get in with mud daubers, and oh, it's not doing this. You take off the engine cover, and lo and behold, there's some mud daubers on there, and it's all over the damn place and got stuff all kind of messed up. It's part of what we live with down here in the south. I don't know how it is in your part of the country, but mud daubers are a big problem. If you don't know what a mud dauber is, Google it, it'll tell you. 100-hour services and services in general are really important. I think that the lady that brought her boat in, apologize, can't remember her name. Rosalind. Prime example of that, but I'm going to tell you what happened to Rosalind's motor, and this is one of the, I've never seen this in messing with motors for well over 60 years, to be honest with you, 55, 60 years, was a bad plug. Never, I swear to God, I've never seen a brand new plug go out on a motor. And so we ran it here, ran fine. She ran well for about 15, 20 minutes, and then she lost power. Well, obviously we're concerned that she's lost the motor. Well, it wasn't. The plug had fouled out, and so it was only running on two, was that a 6-cylinder? 3 cylinders? So it was only running on 2 of the 3 cylinders. It's the first time I've ever seen it. In fact, when we pulled the plug, I sent it to a friend of mine who works for a race car company and said, have you ever seen this? And he goes, yes. But that's pretty rare. So we replaced the plug, ran the motor, checked out to make sure the coil wires and everything were good, and it's ran fine. But doing those 100-hour services, I guess that's one of them. It's a phrase that's used around here a lot, is a good idea. But the other thing that you may want to think about is this. Some people use their boats less hours. So sometimes it's better not to wait for the 100-hour service. So if you've just run it every now and again, and maybe you've not even come close to 100 hours, you might want to think about getting your service done if you've been running the boat, say, for 2 years and just been using it infrequently. One of the other things you want to take into consideration if you're having trouble starting your engine is the pump on the outside of your engine. This particular one only has one. Some of the ones, and it's right here. Michael's finally feeling energetic and he's coming over here. So some of the ones have 2. Now these can either be mechanically driven or they can be ran by vacuum. And sometimes what happens is, because a boat's been sat up, the diaphragms get brittle and it just doesn't get the fuel where you need. So that's something to keep in mind too. And that's regardless of how often you use your boat. If you're going to use your boat more often, that's probably less of a problem. If you're using it not as often, that can become a problem, because the the material dries out, and then it gets dry, and then it gets wet and dry and wet, and then sooner or later it loses its elasticity, etc. And probably what we should do is save some of those, and we'll save some of those over a period of time and kind of show you what to look for between a new one and a used one, etc. But these kits usually are not that expensive, and we could probably do a video to show you how to change those out yourself. The other thing to keep in mind is make sure your hoses and everything are good and tight, etc. So if you do have an older motor, fresh fuel, do not flood it by giving it too much choke. If you follow those basic rules, keep your plugs clean, and if you do foul it out or give it too much choke, don't just keep hammering on it, hammering on it, hammering on it. It's not going to help it. So if you have a particular problem, then put it in the comments below and I'll address it for you. And I think that it would be a great thing to discuss because each motor is different. Every one that we've worked on is different. The other day, the boat left, but the other day we had one in and we was checking it out for this gentleman, and it wouldn't start, wouldn't start, wouldn't start. And we had the cover off, and I finally stuck my hand over the end of the carburetor, which I don't suggest you do if you don't know what you're doing. Do not do that, okay? So don't be going sticking your hands in your motor, okay? But basically, if you put your hand over the end of the carburetor, which you should not be doing, it gives it more fuel and the boat started. So we wasn't getting enough of a choke. So we went through, we tuned it up and everything was fine. But it did tell us we was getting fuel up in the system, but that boat had the same problem, old fuel. So those are the things to keep in mind. Hopefully the audio's good on this one. Please be good on this one. And I apologize, we've not done a good job on that. So those of you that are concerned about my baby here, it's been more of the same, more sanding, more glass work, more. I don't think you've seen our special tools we've built, but we've got a video coming out on some special tools we built to help us sand this a lot better. And I've been working on this. I also want to be honest with everybody. We're rearranging the shop a little bit to make it easier for us to work on boats, get boats in and out. And so I've been spending a lot of time on that as well. So it's a lot easier to get the boats in and out of the building. And that's just part of doing business. And part of what we do here is obviously what Michael does is, work on people's boats and stuff. And he's got a big project over there that he's been working on. He and Hugh, recarpeting, all kinds of good stuff on that motor, on that job, and it's been keeping them pretty busy. So enough of me rambling on as always. If you do have any concerns or whatever, you just put them down in the comments. I'll reply to your comments. The other thing that I would like to say is in your comments, sometimes people make comments and they if that's your feeling, that's your feeling. But if you know something, then put the in that comment what it's based on. Opinions are like belly buttons. We all got one. And I learn all the time. I learn every day of the week, let me tell you. Every day of the week. But to just make a blatant statement, and I don't have a problem with that, but if that's just, this is my opinion, that's great. When I turn around and make a statement, I try to back it up by facts. So if I don't know, I tell you, I am not an expert on these motors by any stretch of the imagination. It took me a long time to wrap my head around them and realize basically it's just a motor, instead of sitting this way, it's sitting up this way. And that, after I because every time I took the cover off, I was like, oh God, I'm being serious. It was like, oh my God, what's all this stuff? And then all of a sudden one day it kind of clicked. It's like, well, realistically, it's just they've turned it upside down or on its side, whatever. Each one is different. We see so many, I can't keep up with them. So, if you do have comments, please, if you know something, if there's something that you can share with me that I can learn from, hey, I love it. I like that stuff and I like to learn. So I'm kind of getting looks from Michael. I either need to shut up or I've missed something. So I'm going to figure out which one. This one? This?
Yeah, so it's still for sale.
This, my boat, my favorite boat, is still up for sale. It is not going for less than $25,000. I won't be that blunt with you. I don't care. I'll buy it myself. But the bottom line about it is to turn around and say, and this does frustrate me, okay? There are a lot of these boats out there that look beautiful. And people have personally sent me pictures of their boats, and they look drop dead gorgeous. Equally, several of those people have contacted me about doing wiring jobs on their boats because their wiring is bad, or they want to do this and that on them. So this is the way I look at it. This boat here has a complete customized wiring job by Grumpy and with my assistant Hugh, okay? We let Michael get involved every now and again because he was acting like a, wasn't involved. So we let him play with us every now and again. So it has a complete wire job. New carpet, built in, deck expansion, customized cup holders. I mean, come on, guys. Customized cup holders, for crying out loud. Took out the entire fuel system, cleaned it all, checked it, reran the fuel lines, etc. So to turn around and say, well, the boat isn't worth more than this, well, that's fine. If it didn't have all that additional work done, I might agree with you. But when you turn around and say, well, oh, it's not worth, I had one guy contact me and say it was worth $6,500, and if in your neighborhood you've got a boat like this worth $6,500, send me the address. I'm coming to get it. I'm on my way. I already got my diesel truck fueled up, but I swear to God, I'll buy these if they're in this shape.
Probably not.
I don't know if they are or not, but if they're in this shape and the bodywork, hull or whatever the hell you call these things, is in this great a shape, for $6,500, I'll buy them all day long. Because for $6,500, I can put a wiring job on it and whatever, and have somebody out on the back on the water in a nice, clean-looking boat. I really like these boats. I like the appearance of these boats. I've, become just more and more. I'm not a boat person, but I kind of like these boats. Some of the new ones, they're very slick, fast-looking. Maybe because of my age. I like these boats. I think this kind of like would be a really good all-round boat that you take the family out on. You can do some good fishing on and what have you. I've been talking to Michael about that we should come up with our own tournament, and you can only fish out an older boat like this. Of course, we're so busy doing other things, but that's something I'd like to do is come up with a tournament. But you've got to have a certain age boat and a certain thing, and I think it would just be a neat thing, kind of like a classic. Because they have classic on bass, everything, but the Mealy Marine Classic or something, I don't know. But anyway, I'm just spouting off. But this thing is still for sale. We have had 2 or 3 people come and look at it. Oh, we are not a bank, okay? We do not finance, all right? We also do not take your first child as down payment for the boat. So all these offers, don't do it. We are not interested in tractors, lawnmowers, etc., etc. Like I said before, I do agree with one statement. Where do you go from here? As far as, Clyde's going in a different direction, that's his business. I mean, he's decided he wants to go in a different direction. And I want to say this, we never know. I don't know what's going on in your lives. You don't know what's going on in my life. People's tastes change. Things happen in life. It doesn't make the difference. Clyde has decided that he wants to go in a different direction. And I commend him for allowing us to take care of this right now and help him find a new home. And I'm being honest with you. We had an offer on the boat the other day, and I told Michael no. Because quite honestly, it was not going to be a good home. That's just the bottom line. Now, I can get overridden on that because it's not my boat. But this boat needs to, like I said before, needs to go to a good home where it's going to be kept up with. It would just absolutely break my heart to see this thing not taken care of, because there is a lot of history here. I've kind of learned more about the history on these boats, and I'm probably saying way too much, but this boat is worth $25,000. Like I've said, it's got a wiring job, the carpet, everything else. Go back and watch the videos and tell me that this boat isn't worth 25 grand. And I'm sure you all got your own opinion. But well, it's the old adage, something is only worth what somebody's willing to pay. I will agree with that statement. So the bottom line about it is this: if we can't get what we want for the boat, or what I believe this boat is worth, then fine. We'll go in a different direction. I don't want to keep. This is going to be the last video on this boat. So one way or another, this will probably be the last time you see this boat, because it's that's just the way it's going to be. The other thing I want to bring up, it's got new tires on it, new batteries, all these things, which
Bluetooth battery or tire pressure monitor.
Yeah, Bluetooth tire pressure monitors on the trailer. Now, let me tell you, those of you that have pulled a trailer, that is just awesomeness. We have racing trailers that we should really have that put on, because there's nothing worse than when you're hauling up the street and you get a flat tire on your trailer. So I did not know that, and that's pretty awesomeness. We did not install that, by the way, but I like that. So anyway, I've rambled on too long as usual. Do appreciate everybody. I'm too old for you to hurt my feelings, but write it down. But don't just, that boat's only worth this, or that boat's only worth that. And I'm going to tell you, every time I bought a car, I'm amazed that when somebody says, "Oh, why did you let me know you was going to buy one of those? My brother-in-law could have got you one of those for this." Isn't it amazing they always come up with that after the fact? But anyway, you all have a great day, and we appreciate you watching us. Thank you.